Some of you may be familiar with the call of the prophet Jeremiah. We're going to examine a few key verses in Jeremiah chapter 1 to see how God equips those he calls. And there is a Hebrew word that pops up a few times to add some dimension to our understanding of it. To learn more, join me for today's episode of All Things Apostolic. Jeremiah was born to a priestly family in Anathoth, about 3 miles from Jerusalem. Though Jeremiah's birth date isn't exactly clear, he received God's call at a young age, probably as a teenager. God's words to Jeremiah are recorded in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Think about the phrase, I ordained thee a prophet. Other Bible versions translate the word ordained as appointed. We think of someone ordained or appointed as being officially invested with ministerial authority. In this case, God, as the authority figure, put a responsibility onto Jeremiah to fulfill a particular mission. Interestingly, the Hebrew word translated as ordained is natan. It is a very, very common Hebrew verb with over 2,000 occurrences in the Old Testament. It can be interpreted a variety of ways, including to perform, ascribe, offer, yield, make, and set, and of course, appointed or ordained, as we've seen. But the most common and basic underlying meaning of the word is to give. Bible scholar Chloe Sun says that one way to think of this verse is that God gave Jeremiah the role of a prophet to all nations. He was ordained, he was appointed, but in a sense, he was given the position. Being a prophet is not just a call, a responsibility, a mission, or a task. It is a gift from God. The verb natan is actually in Jeremiah chapter 1 4 times. It's not translated as give in the King James Version in any of the verses. But let's see how this concept can give more depth of meaning to these verses. We just saw in verse 5 that God gave Jeremiah the office of the prophet. Verse 9 says, Then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have put my words in thy mouth. The word translated as put is natan. In other words, God was saying to Jeremiah, I have given my words in your mouth. Jeremiah didn't have to worry about what to say because God had given him his words. This was also God's gift. Then verse 15 says, For lo, I will call all the families of the kingdoms of the north, saith the Lord, and they shall come, and they shall set every one his throne at the entering of the gates of Jerusalem, and against all the walls thereof round about, and against all the cities of Judah. The word translated as set is natan. God was forewarning Jeremiah of what was to come. Nations from the north would be used as God's instrument of judgment against Judah. They would come to the gates of Jerusalem and overthrow it, and then set, or in a sense give, their reign. In a sense, we can also think of this verse as God giving his judgment because what was going to occur was part of God's sovereign plan. Then verse 18 says, For behold, I have made thee this day a defenced city and an iron pillar and brazen walls against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, against the princes thereof, against the priests thereof, and against the people of the land. The word translated as made is Natan. God concluded his commission to Jeremiah with these images of strength. God was making him like a fortified city, giving him strength to endure. Jeremiah may be attacked by kings, princes, priests, and people, just as the cities of Judah were going to be attacked by invading armies. But the cities of Judah would fall, while Jeremiah would remain strong. There are a couple of principles that I want to draw from this discussion. First, we can see from the Hebrew verb natan that there can be drawn from this chapter a recurring idea of gifting as equipping. You've probably heard the saying that God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called, or those he calls. God gave Jeremiah the words to say. He gave Jeremiah the knowledge that his judgment was coming. And then he gave Jeremiah strength to endure hardship. God gave these gifts to equip Jeremiah to be effective in his calling. But more than this, God gave Jeremiah the role of a prophet. But that didn't mean that the task would be easy and he wouldn't face any opposition. Jeremiah had a difficult responsibility, not only because his prophecies were full of warnings about needing to repent and imminent judgment coming, but also because of the personal trials and tribulations that he faced. After several years of preaching, Jeremiah's family turned against him and even plotted to kill him. Over the years, he was whipped and put in the stocks, attacked by a mob, threatened by the king, and ridiculed. Some of Zedekiah's princes had Jeremiah arrested, beaten, accused of treason, and thrown in jail. And from there, he was then thrown in a deep, empty well. He lived through the siege of Jerusalem along with the rest, and was there as the people were taken away as captives. Perhaps worst of all, Jeremiah was alone. He was not allowed to marry, and his family had abandoned him. So God gave Jeremiah the office of a prophet, but he also allowed him to experience severe trials and opposition. I'm not sure if Jeremiah viewed it as a gift, but Jeremiah served God even when it meant giving up everything and facing persecution. And that leads me to my last point. What is our attitude towards serving God? Do we view it as a gift or as a burden? To be honest, sometimes it can feel like both. God has given each of us a purpose to fulfill. If you ever feel like your calling is becoming too heavy, remember that it is a gift. When we see God's calling as a gift, we stop asking, why me? And start declaring, use me. When we see God's calling as a gift, we learn that even costly obedience is rich with eternal purpose. When we see God's calling as a gift, even hardship can become holy ground. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of All Things Apostolic. And until next time, take care and God bless.